The barn door slammed open, and Catherine Sterling stumbled into the August heat, with her camera case banging against her hip and smoke choking her lungs. Last Chance, Louisiana, 1886. And she had 7 days to produce a husband or lose her uncle's inheritance to a man who'd never met her, but wanted her land. The photographer's studio behind her crackled with flames she hadn't set. Someone wanted her gone. A rough hand grabbed her elbow and yanked her sideways, as a burning timber crashed exactly where she'd been standing.
You got a death wish? Or just bad timing?
The ranch foreman, who'd pulled her clear, had a face weathered by sun and worry. Sandy blonde hair under a brown cowboy hat, and hazel eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. Calvin Chambers, 28, the man half the territory called a peacemaker, and the other half called a fool for trying to keep feuding neighbors from killing each other.
I didn't start that fire.
Didn't say you did, but standing there watching won't put it out.
He released her arm, and she felt the absence of his steadying grip more than she wanted to admit. Catherine was 26, stubborn as a mule according to every man who'd tried to tell her photography wasn't women's work, and tender-hearted enough that she'd cried over a dying horse last week. Right now, her heart was pounding for a different reason. The flames behind them roared higher, and she saw Deputy Marshal Silas Kane watching from across the street, his heavy silver spurs catching the firelight, a smirk on his face that said he knew exactly how that blaze started.
That deputy. He's the one.
Cyrus Pendleton's man. Same thing.
Calvin's jaw tightened, and Catherine noticed the way his hand drifted toward the revolver on his hip before he caught himself. Cyrus Pendleton ran half of Last Chance through bribes and threats, disguised as friendly advice. A family patriarch who arranged marriages for profit and crushed anyone who stood in his way. Right now, he wanted Catherine's land for the railroad survey, and he wanted Calvin silenced for knowing too much about his protection rackets.
I need a husband by next Tuesday, or Pendleton gets everything.
And I need to stay alive past next Tuesday. We make a fine pair.
The way he said it, dry and tired, made her laugh despite the smoke in her throat. Then, the deputy's spurs clinked as he crossed the street toward them, and Calvin grabbed her hand.
Run.
They sprinted down the alley between the mercantile and the feed store, Catherine's skirt tangling around her boots, and Calvin's longer stride forcing him to slow so she could keep up. Behind them, the deputy shouted something about disturbing the peace, and she heard the metallic click of a revolver hammer.
He's going to shoot us in the back.
Not if we're worth more alive. Keep moving.
Calvin yanked her left around a corner, and they stumbled into the narrow gap behind the saloon, where empty whiskey crates were stacked head-high. He pressed her against the rough wood wall and stepped in close, his body shielding hers. One hand braced beside her head. His breath came hard, and she could feel the heat of him through her blouse.
Stay quiet.
The deputy's boots scraped past the alley entrance, spurs jingling with every step, and Catherine held her breath. Calvin's hat brim shadowed his face, but she could see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes tracked the sound. This close, she noticed the small scar above his left eyebrow, and the fact that he smelled like leather and sweat, and something clean she couldn't name. Her heart hammered, and she couldn't tell if it was fear or something else entirely. The footsteps faded, and Calvin eased back half an inch.
You always get into this much trouble, or is today special?
I could ask you the same.
His mouth quirked, and for a second, she thought he might smile. Then, his expression went serious again, and he glanced toward the alley mouth.
Pendleton put a bounty on me this morning. $500. Claims I stole cattle from the Barlow Ranch.
Did you?
No. But the evidence says I did, because Silas planted it.
Catherine's stomach dropped. $500 would bring every bounty hunter and desperate fool within 200 miles.
Then we need proof. You didn't.
There's a ledger. Pendleton keeps it in his office. Every bribe, every setup, every name clears me and half a dozen other men he's framed.
So we steal it.
We? She didn't warn or fled her. One offer said they were plessed down, and they warned the one stas but the Peter and the trams. They were the nuft when the lost lord spoke. But stress, I just bowing frest in the teaching dynatize. Our fire. I called it tire, but my finally was pay for a Christ it's walking, by Cyverlios.
She lifted her chin and met his eyes.
You need help, and I need a husband. Temporarily. On paper, just until the deadline. Then we take the ledger to the federal marshal in Baton Rouge, and you're clear.
That's the worst deal I've heard all week.
You have a better offer?
He stared at her for a long moment, and she watched something shift in his expression. Caution, giving way to calculation.
Pendleton's office is above the land claims building. 2 guards at night, 1 at the door, 1 inside.
Can you get past them?
Can you keep up if I do?
She grinned, despite everything.
Try me.
Calvin stepped back and offered his hand like a partner sealing a bargain. She took it, and his grip was warm and solid.
Then we do this tonight, before the bounty hunters start arriving.
They slipped out of the alley and moved fast through the back streets, keeping to the shadows. The sun hung low and fierce, turning the bayou water bronze and making the air shimmer with heat. Catherine's blouse stuck to her back, and her camera case thumped against her ribs. Ahead, the land claims building rose 2 stories, white painted wood with green shutters, and a balcony that wrapped the 2nd floor. A single lantern burned in the upper window.
That's Pendleton's office.
How do we get up there?
Front door's too obvious. Balcony's our best shot.
He pointed to the livery stable next door, where the roof slanted close to the balcony railing. Catherine eyed the gap and swallowed.
That's a long jump.
You said you could keep up.
She shot him a look, and he had the nerve to almost smile again. They circled to the back of the livery and climbed the exterior ladder, boots scuffing on the rungs. At the top, Calvin tested the roof boards and motioned her forward. The shingles were hot under her palms, and the gap to the balcony looked wider from up here.
I'll go first. Then you follow.
What if I fall?
Then I'll catch you.
He said it like a plain fact, and something in her chest tightened. Calvin backed up 3 steps, ran, and launched himself across the gap. He landed hard on the balcony railing, caught his balance, and swung over onto the boards. Then he turned and held out both hands.
Come on.
Catherine took a breath, ran and jumped. Her boot caught the edge of the shingle and she stumbled midair. Calvin lunged forward and grabbed her wrists, hauling her over the railing in a scramble of skirts and gasping breath. She landed against his chest, and his arms closed around her for a heartbeat before he set her back on her feet.
I told you I could keep up.
Didn't say you couldn't. Just said it was a long jump.
She laughed softly, and he shook his head, but she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. The balcony door was locked, but the window beside it had a loose latch. Calvin worked it open with his knife and slipped inside. Catherine followed, her boots landing silent on the plank floor. The office was dim and smelled like tobacco and old paper. A heavy desk dominated the center. Filing cabinets lined one wall, and a locked strongbox sat on a side table.
Ledger's probably in the box.
Can you open it?
Not quietly.
Catherine pulled a hairpin from her bun and knelt beside the lock.
Then let me try.
You know how to pick locks.
I know how to solve problems.
She worked the pin into the mechanism, listening for the click, and felt his presence close behind her, watching the door. The lock gave with a soft snick, and she lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of papers, a small leather pouch of coins, and a black ledger bound with string. She pulled it out and flipped it open. Page after page of names, dates, amounts. Pendleton's entire operation laid bare.
This is it.
Then we move. Now.
Bootsteps sounded on the stairs outside, and Calvin grabbed her arm. The door handle rattled, and a voice called out. It was Silas, the deputy, his spurs clinking as he climbed.
Balcony. Go.
Catherine stuffed the ledger inside her camera case, and they bolted for the window. Calvin went first, and she scrambled after him. Behind them, the office door slammed open, and Silas shouted. A gunshot cracked, and wood splintered beside Catherine's head. She yelped, and Calvin pulled her down behind the balcony railing.
He's trigger happy tonight.
Can we make the jump back?
Not with him shooting at us.
More footsteps pounded up the stairs. The second guard. They were pinned. Calvin scanned the street below and pointed to a freight wagon parked beside the depot loading dock.
We jumped down. Onto that wagon.
That's 2 stories.
You got a better idea?
Silas fired again, and the bullet punched through the railing inches from Calvin's shoulder. Catherine grabbed his hand, and they ran to the far end of the balcony. The wagon bed was piled with hay bales and looked impossibly small from above.
On 3?
On now.
They jumped together, hit the hay hard, and rolled. Catherine's elbow banged something metal, and her breath whooshed out. Calvin landed beside her and dragged her upright.
Move. Train yard.
They vaulted off the wagon and sprinted across the depot yard. Behind them, Silas leaned over the balcony and fired twice more. The bullets kicked up dust at their heels. The freight yard spread ahead. A maze of tracks and boxcars and flatbeds. A whistle shrieked, and a locomotive chugged to life, black smoke belching from its stack.
That train's leaving in 2 minutes. We get on it, or we're dead.
Where's it going?
Does it matter?
He had a point. They dodged between 2 flatbeds stacked with lumber and came out beside the moving train. It was picking up speed, wheels grinding, couplings clanging. Calvin ran alongside and grabbed the ladder on the nearest boxcar.
Take my hand.
Catherine ran harder, her lungs burning, and reached out. Their fingers brushed and missed. The train pulled ahead. She put on a burst of speed and leaped. Calvin caught her wrist and yanked her up onto the ladder. She clung to the rungs, panting, and he climbed above her to haul open the boxcar door.
Inside.
They tumbled into the dim interior, and the door slammed shut behind them. The car smelled like grain and dust. Catherine sprawled on the floorboards, and Calvin landed beside her, breathing hard. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she started laughing, half hysterical, and he joined her, the sound rough and surprised.
We just stole a ledger and jumped on a moving train.
And you picked a lock. You're full of surprises.
She sat up and brushed hay from her hair.
So are you. Most men would have left me on that balcony.
Most men don't need a temporary wife.
The way he said it, wry and a little bitter, made her chest ache. She pulled the ledger from her case and opened it to the light slanting through the slats.
This clears you. Every name, every date. Silas planted evidence on at least 6 men.
Including me.
Including you. We take this to the federal marshal, and you're free.
If we make it to Baton Rouge alive.
The train rattled over a switch and picked up speed. Catherine leaned against the wall and looked at him in the golden slanting light. His hat was gone, lost somewhere in the chaos, and his hair was mussed. He looked younger without it, less guarded.
Why does Pendleton want you dead so badly?
Because I know he's planning to force his niece into marriage with a railroad surveyor. Soon as the papers are filed, he gets control of her land and a cut of the rail contract. I told her she didn't have to go through with it.
So he framed you.
And put a price on my head.
Catherine's anger flared hot.
He's a coward.
He's connected. Federal marshal's our only chance.
The train swayed, and she swayed with it, her shoulder bumping his. He didn't move away, and neither did she. Outside, the sun was sinking fast, painting the sky orange and red.
How long to Baton Rouge?
2 days, if we don't get caught.
Then we'd better not get caught.
His mouth quirked again, and this time, it was almost a real smile.
You're bossy for a photographer.
You're cautious for a peacemaker.
He shook his head, but she saw the warmth in his eyes. The train clicked over the rails, and the light faded. Catherine's stomach growled, and she remembered she hadn't eaten since morning. Calvin dug in his coat pocket and pulled out a strip of jerky.
Not much, but it's something.
She took half and chewed slowly. It was tough and salty and tasted better than it should have.
Thank you.
We're partners now. Temporarily.
The word hung between them, and Catherine wondered if he felt the same strange pull she did. The sense that temporary might not be long enough. The train rounded a curve, and the boxcar door rattled. Calvin tensed and put a hand on his revolver.
Someone's on the roof.
Footsteps scraped above them, heavy and deliberate. Then a voice called down, rough and eager. It wasn't Silas, but someone worse. A bounty hunter who'd heard about the price on Calvin's head.
We need to move. Next car.
How?
The coupling. Between the cars.
He pushed the door open a crack and wind rushed in. The ground blurred past, dark and fast. Calvin climbed out onto the narrow platform between cars and held out his hand.
Don't look down.
Catherine grabbed his hand and stepped out. The wind tore at her skirt, and the noise was deafening. The coupling swayed, and she stumbled. Calvin's arm went around her waist, anchoring her, and they crossed together. He shoved the next car's door open, and they fell inside. This car was empty, except for a few crates. Calvin slammed the door and wedged it shut with a broken slat.
That won't hold long.
Then we keep moving.
They worked their way forward, car by car, until they reached the passenger section. A handful of travelers dozed in the seats, heads lolling. Calvin pulled Catherine into the last row, and they sat close, her camera case wedged between them.
Do you think he'll follow us all the way?
If the bounty's worth it, yes.
She leaned her head against his shoulder without thinking, and felt him go still. Then his arm settled carefully around her back, warm and solid.
You should rest. Long way to Baton Rouge.
So should you.
Someone's got to keep watch.
She tilted her head to look at him, and found his face inches from hers. His eyes tired, but alert.
Then we take turns. You wake me in 2 hours.
Deal.
She closed her eyes and let the train's rhythm lull her. The last thing she felt was Calvin's hand resting lightly on her arm. A promise that he'd keep her safe. When she woke, the sun was rising and the train was slowing. Calvin was still awake, shadows under his eyes, but his expression calm.
We're coming into a depot. Need to get off before they check tickets.
Catherine sat up and rubbed her eyes. Her neck was stiff, and her mouth tasted like dust.
Where are we?
Not sure. Somewhere between Last Chance and Baton Rouge.
The train shuddered to a stop, and they slipped out onto the platform. The depot was small, just a wooden shack and a water tower. A sign read Cypress Bend. Calvin scanned the crowd, and his shoulders relaxed a fraction.
No bounty hunters yet.
Yet?
We need supplies. Food. Water. Maybe a horse if we can afford it.
I have some money. Not much.
It'll have to do.
They walked into the town's single street, and Catherine felt eyes on them. A woman in a faded dress whispered to her neighbor, and a man in a storekeeper's apron stared. Calvin kept his hand near his revolver, and Catherine stayed close.
They know something.
Or they've seen a wanted poster.
They ducked into the general store, and the clerk looked up from his ledger. He was old, white-haired, with sharp eyes that missed nothing.
Need supplies. Bread. Canteen. Whatever you've got.
The clerk's gaze flicked to Catherine and back to Calvin. He nodded slowly and pulled items from the shelves. Catherine paid with coins from her pocket, and the clerk wrapped everything in paper.
Is there a justice of the peace in town?
The clerk blinked.
We need to get married. Today, if possible.
Calvin's head snapped toward her, and she gave him a look that said, "Trust me." The clerk's expression softened.
Reverend's 2 streets over. White church with the bell tower.
Thank you.
They left the store, and Calvin caught her elbow.
What are you doing?
Making it legal. If we're married, the inheritance is safe, and Pendleton can't touch it. Then we use the money to clear your name.
That's not a real marriage.
It's real enough for a lawyer. And we can dissolve it after. If you want.
She said the last part quietly, and watched his face. He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his eyes.
You'd tie yourself to a wanted man just to keep your land?
I'd tie myself to a good man who's been wronged. There's a difference.
His jaw worked, and she thought he might argue. Then, he nodded once.
All right. Let's do it.
The church was small and plain, the bell tower crooked. The Reverend was a thin man with kind eyes, who asked no questions when they said they needed to marry immediately.
You got a witness?
The clerk from the store had followed them and stood in the doorway, grinning.
I'll stand for them.
The ceremony took 5 minutes. Catherine's hands shook when Calvin slipped a braided grass ring onto her finger, a makeshift thing he'd woven while she wasn't looking. The Reverend pronounced them man and wife, and Calvin kissed her, quick and careful, his lips warm against hers. When he pulled back his eyes, held something she couldn't name.
Mrs. Chambers.
Mr. Sterling.
He laughed, surprised, and the Reverend chuckled.
You two figure out your names later. Right now, you'd best move. There's a man asking about a bounty at the depot.
Calvin's expression went hard.
How long ago? 5 minutes. Maybe less.
They ran. The streets blurred past, and Catherine's lungs burned. Behind them a shout went up, and she glanced back to see a man in a duster pointing at them. Calvin grabbed her hand and pulled her into an alley.
This way.
They burst out onto the riverbank, where a small skiff was tied to a post. Calvin cut the rope and shoved the boat into the water.
Get in.
Catherine jumped in, and the skiff rocked. Calvin pushed off and grabbed the oars. Behind them, the bounty hunter skidded to a stop at the water's edge and raised his rifle.
Calvin!
Down!
Catherine flattened herself in the bottom of the boat, and Calvin rowed hard. The rifle cracked, and water sprayed beside the hull. Calvin rowed faster, muscles straining, and the current caught them. The bounty hunter fired twice more, but the distance was too great. The shots went wide, and the current swept them around a bend. Calvin shipped the oars and sagged forward, breathing hard.
Are you hit?
No. You?
No.
She sat up, and the skiff wobbled. Her foot slipped on the wet boards, and she lurched sideways. Calvin lunged and caught her arm, pulling her back toward the center. She crashed against his chest, and his arms went around her.
I'm fine. I just slipped.
You keep saying that, but you keep scaring me.
She looked up and found his face inches from hers again, his expression fierce and worried.
I'm not trying to.
I know.
They stayed that way for a heartbeat, the skiff drifting, the river lapping at the sides. Then Calvin eased back and cleared his throat.
We should keep moving. Baton Rouge is still a day away.
Catherine nodded and settled onto the bench across from him. The sun climbed higher, and the heat pressed down. They drifted for an hour, following the current, and Catherine watched the bayou slide past. Cypress trees draped with moss, waterbirds wading in the shallows, the occasional cabin with smoke rising from the chimney. It was beautiful and strange, and she felt a pang of longing for something she couldn't name.
Do you ever think about leaving? Going somewhere new?
Used to. Before I took the job at the ranch.
What stopped you?
Figured if I kept running, I'd never stop.
She understood that.
And now?
Now I'm running anyway. Just with better company.
She smiled, and he smiled back. Slow and real. The skiff drifted around another bend, and a town appeared ahead, larger than Cypress Bend, with a proper dock and warehouses lining the water.
We can rest here. Get more supplies.
And then?
Then we finish this. One way or another.
They tied the skiff at the dock and climbed out. Catherine's legs were stiff, and her back ached. Calvin steadied her with a hand on her elbow, and she leaned into the touch.
I need to stretch.
Same.
They walked up the main street and bought bread and cheese from a bakery. The woman behind the counter gave them a knowing look, and Catherine realized how they must appear, rumpled and travel-worn, her hair half fallen from its pins, and his shirt torn at the shoulder.
We look like fugitives.
We are fugitives.
Good point.
They found a quiet spot under a willow tree and sat in the shade. Catherine opened the bread and tore off a piece. It was still warm and smelled like yeast and butter. She handed half to Calvin, and they ate in comfortable silence.
When this is over, what will you do?
Clear my name. Go back to the ranch, if they'll have me.
And if they won't?
Find another ranch. Or another town.
He said it like it didn't matter, but she heard the edge in his voice.
You could come with me. Help me rebuild the studio.
I'm a ranch foreman, not a photographer.
You're good at solving problems. That's what I need.
He looked at her, and something shifted in his expression.
You're serious.
I'm always serious about business.
This isn't business.
She held his gaze.
No. It's not.
He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering.
We should keep moving.
But he didn't move, and neither did she. The moment stretched, and Catherine felt her pulse quicken. Then a voice called out from the street, and they both jumped. It was a deputy, local, asking if they'd seen a wanted man. Calvin pulled his hat low, and Catherine looped her arm through his.
Just passing through, officer. Haven't seen anyone.
The deputy nodded and moved on. Calvin let out a breath.
Too close.
We're almost there. One more day.
One more day.
They walked back to the dock and found the skiff gone. Calvin swore, and Catherine's stomach sank.
Someone stole it.
Or it drifted loose. Either way, we're on foot now.
They struck out along the river road, keeping to the shade where they could. The heat was brutal, and Catherine's blouse stuck to her skin. Calvin walked beside her, silent and watchful. Hours passed, and the sun began to sink. They stopped at a creek to refill the canteen and wash the dust from their faces.
How much farther?
Another 10 miles. Maybe 12.
Can we make it before dark?
If we push.
They pushed. The road wound through stands of pine and open fields where the air shimmered with heat. Catherine's feet ached, and her legs trembled, but she kept moving. Calvin stayed close, his hand occasionally brushing hers. As the sun touched the horizon, they crested a hill and saw Baton Rouge spread below, lights beginning to glow in windows.
We made it.
Almost.
They descended into the city and found the federal marshal's office in a brick building near the courthouse. The marshal was a stern man with gray hair and a badge that gleamed in the lamplight.
We have evidence of corruption in Last Chance. Deputy framing innocent men on behalf of Cyrus Pendleton.
Catherine pulled the ledger from her case and laid it on the desk. The marshal opened it, and his expression darkened.
This is detailed.
It's everything. Bribes, setups, false accusations.
And there's a bounty on me that's based on lies.
The marshal studied Calvin, and then Catherine.
You two? Married?
As of this morning.
Why?
Because I needed a husband to keep my inheritance, and he needed help clearing his name.
The marshal's mouth twitched.
That's the strangest partnership I've heard this year. It worked. I'll need statements from both of you. And I'll send men to Last Chance to arrest Pendleton and his deputy.
How long will that take?
A few days. Maybe a week. The bounty? I'll issue a suspension order tonight. You're safe as long as you stay in Baton Rouge.
Calvin's shoulders sagged with relief.
Thank you.
The marshal nodded, and they gave their statements. By the time they finished, the moon was high, and Catherine could barely keep her eyes open. They found a boarding house and rented a room. The landlady gave them a single bed and a knowing smile.
Just married. Are you?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, congratulations.
She left and closed the door. Catherine looked at the bed and then at Calvin.
I can sleep on the floor.
No. We'll share. We're adults.
He said it firmly, and she nodded. They took turns washing up and changing into the spare clothes they'd bought. When Catherine came back from the washroom, Calvin was sitting on the edge of the bed, his hair damp, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar.
Are you all right?
Just tired.
We did it. We're safe.
For now.
She sat beside him, and their knees touched.
What happens after Pendleton's arrested?
I go back to Last Chance. Clear my name, officially.
And us?
He turned to look at her, and his eyes were serious.
What do you want?
I don't know. I thought this was temporary, but now it doesn't feel temporary.
He reached for her hand and laced their fingers together.
It doesn't feel temporary to me either.
She leaned her forehead against his and closed her eyes.
So what do we do?
We take it one day at a time. See where it goes.
I can do that.
Good.
He kissed her, slow and careful, and she kissed him back. When they pulled apart, he smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him.
Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start figuring out the rest.
They lay down together, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her. The room was dark and quiet, and Catherine felt safer than she had in days.
Calvin?
Yeah?
Thank you. For everything.
You saved me, just as much as I saved you.
She smiled in the dark and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep. Calvin stayed awake a little longer, listening to her breathing, feeling the warmth of her against him. For the first time in weeks, he felt something other than fear. He felt hope. 3 days later, they received word that Pendleton and his deputy had been arrested. The charges were extensive: bribery, extortion, evidence tampering, conspiracy to commit fraud. The bounty on Calvin was officially lifted.
We can go home.
Home.
Is Last Chance home for you now?
I think it might be.
They took the train back, riding together in a passenger car this time, instead of clinging to the roof of a freight. The scenery rolled past, and Catherine watched the bayou country appear again, green and wild.
What will you do with your photography business?
Keep it. Expand it, maybe. There's plenty of stories to tell in Last Chance.
And your inheritance?
Safe. The deadline passed while we were in Baton Rouge. We're legally married, so the trust can't be contested.
Do you want to stay married?
The question hung in the air between them. Catherine turned to look at him and saw the vulnerability in his eyes.
Do you?
Yes.
He said it without hesitation, and her heart skipped.
Then I do too.
Good.
He kissed her, right there in the passenger car, and she didn't care who saw. When the train pulled into Last Chance, the platform was crowded. Word had spread about Pendleton's arrest, and the whole town seemed to be waiting. The sheriff was there, looking sheepish.
Mr. Chambers, Mrs. Chambers, I owe you both an apology. You do. Pendleton had half the town council in his pocket. I didn't know who to trust.
And now?
Now the council's been dissolved, and we're starting fresh. Clean slate.
Calvin nodded, and they stepped off the platform. People called out congratulations and apologies. A few women stopped Catherine to admire her bravery.
Running from the law on your wedding day. That's quite a story. It's one I'll never forget.
They walked through town together, hand in hand, and Catherine felt the curious stares and the whispers.
They're going to talk about us for months.
Let them. We gave them a good story.
The best.
They reached the edge of town, where the road split. One direction led to Calvin's ranch. The other led to the boarding house where Catherine had been staying.
Come with me.
To the ranch?
It's your home now, too. If you want it to be.
She looked at him. This man she'd married in desperation, and come to love through fire and fear and trust.
I want it to be...
They walked together down the road toward the ranch, the sun warm on their backs, the bayou whispering in the distance. The ranch house was modest but well kept. Calvin had been living alone since his parents passed, managing the property and mediating disputes between neighbors.
It's not much.
It's perfect.
She meant it. The house had a wide porch, a sturdy roof, and windows that let in the light. Inside it was clean and simple. A main room with a fireplace, a kitchen, 2 bedrooms.
I'll clear out the second bedroom for your darkroom, for developing your photographs.
You'd do that?
Of course. Your work is important.
She kissed him, quick and grateful, and he grinned.
I could get used to this.
Good.
They spent the rest of the day settling in. Catherine unpacked her camera and equipment. Calvin showed her around the property, the barn, the corral, the small orchard behind the house.
We've got chickens, a few horses, some cattle. It's enough to live on.
It's more than enough.
That evening they sat on the porch and watched the sunset. The sky turned gold and pink and deep orange.
I never thought I'd have this.
What?
Peace. A partner. Someone I trust.
Me neither.
She leaned against him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders.
Catherine, seeing mourn or fletter, one sopper said, there were cless down. The morn the wind stus, but that for year in his trams, there was enough, the lust laud spok. But stus, I looked when, I teaching then ties. Catherine, I called it tire, but my signed he was pay for a Christ it's watching, but I cyberly us.
Yeah?
I love you.
The words were simple, but they hit her like a thunderclap. She turned to look at him and saw the truth in his eyes.
I love you too.
He kissed her, slow and deep, and the world narrowed to just the two of them. When they finally pulled apart, the stars were starting to appear.
Come on, let's go inside.
They went inside together and closed the door. 2 weeks later, Catherine set up her darkroom in the second bedroom. She hung thick curtains, arranged her chemicals, and built shelves for her glass plates. Calvin helped, following her instructions without complaint.
Hand me that tray.
This one?
Yes. Perfect.
She smiled at him, and he kissed the top of her head.
You're beautiful when you're focused.
I'm beautiful all the time.
True.
She laughed and swatted his arm. They worked together until the room was ready. That evening, Catherine developed the photographs she'd taken during their escape. The barn fire, the train yard, the moments on the road. Each image told part of their story.
These are incredible.
They're ours.
Will you sell them?
Some. But I'm keeping the best ones for us.
She pulled out a photograph of the two of them on the freight train, Calvin's arm around her, both of them looking windblown and fierce.
This one.
We look like outlaws.
We were. For a little while.
Best week of my life.
Mine too.
He kissed her, and she kissed him back, the photograph still in her hand. The ranch settled into a rhythm. Calvin worked the land, and Catherine built her photography business. She took portraits of families, documented town events, captured the beauty of the bayou. Word spread, and clients came from neighboring towns.
You're going to be famous.
I just want to tell good stories.
You already do.
One afternoon, a letter arrived from Baton Rouge. It was from the marshal. Pendleton had been sentenced to 15 years in prison. The deputy got 10. The town council in Last Chance had been reformed, and new elections were scheduled.
It's really over.
It is.
Calvin folded the letter and set it aside.
What do you want to do to celebrate?
I don't know. Something fun.
How about a picnic by the river?
Perfect.
They packed a basket with bread, cheese, fruit, and a bottle of wine. Catherine brought her camera. They walked to the river, following a narrow trail through the trees. The water was slow and green, reflecting the sky.
This is my favorite spot.
I can see why.
They spread a blanket on the grass and unpacked the food. Catherine set up her camera on its tripod and adjusted the lens.
What are you doing?
Taking a picture of us.
How?
Timer. I set it, and then run back.
That sounds complicated.
Trust me.
She set the timer and hurried back to the blanket. Calvin pulled her down beside him, just as the shutter clicked.
Did it work?
We'll find out when I develop it.
She laughed, and he kissed her, playful and light. They ate and talked and watched the river.
I never thought I'd be this happy.
Me neither.
Thank you for taking a chance on me.
Thank you for taking a chance on me.
They lay back on the blanket and looked up at the sky. The clouds drifted past, slow and lazy. As the sun began to set, they packed up and walked back to the ranch. Catherine's hand in Calvin's, their steps in sync.
I have something for you.
What?
Close your eyes.
She did, and he led her carefully up the porch steps and into the house.
Okay. Open.
She opened her eyes and gasped. On the mantel above the fireplace was a framed photograph. It was the picture of them on the freight train, the one she'd said she was keeping.
You framed it.
I wanted us to remember.
I'll never forget.
She turned to him, tears in her eyes, and kissed him.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
They stood there in the golden light, holding each other, and Catherine felt the weight of the past weeks lift. They'd survived fire, betrayal, and fear. They'd found each other in the chaos and built something real. That night they lay in bed together, the window open to let in the breeze.
What are you thinking about?
The future.
What about it?
I want to document this. The ranch. The town. Our life together.
Like a project?
Like a legacy.
I like that.
She curled against him and closed her eyes.
Calvin?
Yeah?
Thank you for choosing me.
Every time.
She smiled in the dark and let sleep take her. Outside, the bayou whispered, and the stars turned overhead. Inside the ranch house, two people who'd been strangers were now partners, lovers, and friends. The kind of bond that could survive anything. Months passed. The seasons changed, and the ranch thrived. Catherine's photography business grew, and Calvin expanded the herd. They worked side by side, building a life that was theirs. One evening in late spring, they sat on the porch and watched the fireflies.
Do you ever miss the excitement?
The running and the danger?
Yeah,
Not even a little.
me neither.
She laughed and leaned her head on his shoulder.
This is better.
Much better.
They sat in comfortable silence, the fireflies blinking in the dusk.
Catherine, seeing mourn or flutter, one sopper said, there were cless down. The morn the wind stus, but that for year in his trams, there was enough, the lust laud spark. But stus, I looked when, I teaching then ties. Catherine, I called it tire, but my signed he was pay for a Christ it's watching, but I cyberly us.
Yeah?
I'm glad you needed a husband.
I'm glad you needed help.
Best mistake we ever made.
It wasn't a mistake. It was fate.
I'll take that.
He kissed her, and she kissed him back. Slow and sure. The fireflies danced around them, and the night settled in, warm and full of promise. Inside the house, the framed photograph still sat on the mantel, a reminder of where they'd been and how far they'd come. Outside, the world kept turning, but inside the ranch house, two people had found exactly what they needed. Each other. The following week, a letter arrived from the marshal in Baton Rouge. Pendleton had been sentenced to 15 years in prison. The deputy had fled, but a warrant was out for his arrest. Calvin's name was officially cleared, and the bounty removed from all records. Catherine read the letter aloud on the porch, while Calvin repaired a section of fence nearby.
It's over. Really over.
About time.
We should celebrate.
How?
I don't know. A nice dinner? A trip to town?
Or we could just stay here.
She walked over and handed him the letter.
That's not much of a celebration.
I disagree.
He set down his tools and pulled her close.
Being here with you is celebration enough.
You're getting sentimental in your old age.
I'm 28.
Like I said. Old.
He laughed and kissed her forehead.
You're impossible.
You love it.
I do.
That night, they sat under the stars and talked about the future. Catherine wanted to expand her studio and maybe hire an assistant. Calvin wanted to buy the neighboring property and increase the herd. They made plans and dreamed aloud, and the night wrapped around them like a blanket.
Do you think we'll always be this happy?
I plan on it.
Good answer.
I'm full of them.
She laughed and leaned against him. The stars wheeled overhead, and the bayou sang its familiar night song. Somewhere in the distance a night bird called, and another answered. Everything felt exactly right.
Catherine, seeing mourn or flutter, one sopher said, there were cless down. The morn the wind stus, but that for year in his trams, there was enough, the lust laud spok. But stus, I looked when, I teaching then ties. Catherine, I called it tire, but my signed he was pay for a Christ it's watching, but I cyberly us.
Yeah?
Thank you for trusting me.
Thank you for giving me a reason to.
He kissed her, and she melted into him, her hands gripping his shirt. When they pulled apart, they were both breathless.
Let's go inside.
Best idea you've had all day.
They walked into the house, hand in hand, the door closing softly behind them. Inside, the warmth and safety they'd built together waited. Outside, the world kept turning, but they had everything they needed right here. The next morning, Catherine woke early and made coffee. Calvin joined her on the porch, and they watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold.
Beautiful.
It is.
I meant you.
Smooth talker.
Only for you.
She smiled and handed him a cup. They drank in companionable silence, the day stretching ahead of them, full of possibility. A rider appeared on the road, a young man with a package. He dismounted and tipped his hat. "Morning, folks. Got a delivery for Mrs. Chambers."
That's me.
He handed her a wrapped parcel, and she signed for it. After he left, she opened it carefully. Inside was a framed certificate from the Louisiana Photography Guild, recognizing her work.
I didn't even know I was being considered.
You deserve it.
This is incredible.
You're incredible.
She set the certificate down and hugged him tight.
I couldn't have done any of this without you.
Sure, you could have.
Maybe. But it wouldn't have been as good.
Same here.
They stood together on the porch, the certificate gleaming in the morning light.
What do you want to do today?
Fix that fence. Check the cattle. Maybe ride out to the north pasture.
Sounds perfect.
You're coming with me?
Always.
They saddled the horses and rode out together, the sun warm on their backs. The land stretched out green and alive, the bayou glittering in the distance. They worked side by side, mending fences and checking the herd. By midday, the heat was fierce, and they stopped under a stand of oak trees to rest. Calvin pulled out a canteen, and they passed it back and forth.
Hot today.
Very.
Want to head back?
Not yet. I like being out here with you.
Me too.
They sat in the shade and talked about nothing important. The conversation drifted from the weather to the ranch, to a funny story Calvin remembered from years ago. Catherine laughed until her sides hurt.
You're making that up.
I swear it's true.
I don't believe you.
Ask anyone in town.
I will.
He grinned, and she shoved his shoulder playfully.
Careful. I'll dump you in the creek.
You wouldn't dare.
Try me.
She laughed, and he grabbed her hand, pulling her to her feet. They mounted up and rode toward the creek, racing each other across the open field. Catherine's hair flew behind her, and Calvin's hat nearly blew off. They reached the creek at the same time, both breathless and laughing.
Ty,
I won.
in your dreams.
You're a sore loser.
And you're delusional.
She splashed water at him, and he yelped.
That's cold.
Good.
He splashed her back, and she shrieked. They stood knee-deep in the creek, soaked and grinning like children.
This is ridiculous.
This is perfect.
He waded over and kissed her, water dripping from their clothes.
You're right. It is perfect.
They rode back to the ranch in the late afternoon, the sun low and golden. The horses were tired, and so were they, but the day felt complete. That evening they sat on the porch again, watching the light fade.
I could get used to this.
You better. You're stuck with me.
Best decision I ever made.
Marrying me?
Trusting you.
Same thing.
She smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. The fireflies began their nightly dance, and the world settled into its evening rhythm.
Catherine? Seeing mourn or fletter. Once offer said, there were cless down. The morn the wind stus, but that for year in his trams. There was enough, the lust laud spok. But stus. I looked when, I teaching then ties. Catherine, I called it tire, but my signed he was pay for a Christ it's watching, but I civilly us.
Yeah?
I love you.
I love you too.
He kissed the top of her head, and they sat in the gathering darkness, content and whole. The future stretched ahead of them, full of work and laughter and love. They'd face danger together and come out stronger. Now they faced the quiet beauty of ordinary days, and that was the greatest adventure of all. Summer deepened, and the ranch flourished. Calvin hired 2 hands to help with the cattle, and Catherine took on more photography clients from neighboring towns. They worked hard, but they also made time for each other. Evenings on the porch became a ritual, a quiet anchor in their busy lives. One afternoon, a letter arrived from Baton Rouge. Calvin opened it and read, his face serious.
What is it?
The trial's set for next month. They want me to testify.
We'll go together.
You don't have to.
I want to. We're a team. Remember?
I remember.
He folded the letter and pulled her close.
Thank you.
Always.
The month passed quickly. They prepared their statements and packed for the trip. The morning they left, the sky was clear, and the air smelled of grass and wildflowers. They rode to the nearest town and caught the train to Baton Rouge. The city was bustling and loud, a sharp contrast to the quiet ranch. They checked into a hotel and met with the prosecutor. He was a stern man with sharp eyes.
Mr. Chambers, Mrs. Chambers, thank you for coming. Your testimony will be critical. Pendleton's lawyers are arguing he was misled by his deputy.
That's a lie. He orchestrated everything.
We have the ledger. The evidence is clear. Good. We'll make sure the jury sees it.
The trial began the next day. The courtroom was packed. Pendleton sat at the defense table, flanked by expensive lawyers. He looked older, his face drawn, but his eyes still held that cold calculation. Calvin took the stand first. He spoke clearly, detailing the threats, the false bounty, the night they'd escaped. The defense attorney tried to rattle him, but Calvin stayed calm.
Mr. Pendleton used fear and bribery to control Last Chance. He destroyed lives to protect his schemes. I'm here to make sure he answers for it.
The jury listened intently. When Catherine took the stand, she was nervous, but steady. She described the ledger, the evidence, the deputy's confession.
Cyrus Pendleton built his power on lies and violence. He tried to silence anyone who threatened him. But we survived, and we brought the truth.
The defense tried to discredit her, but she held firm. When she stepped down, Calvin squeezed her hand.
You were amazing.
So were you.
The trial lasted 3 days. The prosecution presented the ledger, witness statements, and the deputy's signed confession. The defense had nothing but empty arguments. When the jury returned, they looked grim. The foreman stood.
We find the defendant Cyrus Pendleton guilty on all counts.
The courtroom erupted. Pendleton's face went white. The judge banged his gavel.
Order. Mr. Pendleton, you are sentenced to 15 years in the state prison.
Guards led him away. Calvin and Catherine stood together, relief washing over them.
It's over.
It's really over.
They walked out of the courtroom into the bright afternoon. The city seemed lighter, the air clearer.
What do you want to do now?
Go home.
Me too.
They caught the train the next morning. The journey back felt different, peaceful. When they reached Last Chance, the town greeted them warmly. The new sheriff shook Calvin's hand.
Good to have you back. Cleared and free. Good to be back.
They rode home to the ranch as the sun set. The house looked golden in the evening light, welcoming and safe. Calvin dismounted and helped Catherine down.
Home.
Our home.
He kissed her, and she kissed him back, the world fading around them. They stood there for a long moment, wrapped in each other.
Ready to start the rest of our lives?
With you? Always.
They walked inside together, closing the door on the past and stepping into the future. Summer arrived in full force. The days were long and hot, and the ranch demanded constant attention. Calvin and Catherine fell into an easy rhythm. They rose early, worked hard, and spent their evenings together on the porch. One afternoon, a rider came up the drive. Calvin recognized him as a messenger from town.
Message for you, Mr. Chambers.
Calvin opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from the railroad company. They wanted to buy a strip of land along the eastern edge of the ranch for the new rail line. The offer was generous.
What do you think?
It's fair, and it would help us expand the rest of the operation.
Then let's do it.
They signed the papers, and the railroad deal went through. With the extra money, they bought more cattle and hired 2 ranch hands. The work got easier, and the ranch prospered. Catherine's photography business grew too. She traveled to nearby towns, taking portraits and documenting the changing landscape. She always came home to Calvin, and he was always waiting. One evening in late summer, they sat on the porch, watching a thunderstorm roll in. The air smelled like rain, and the sky flashed with lightning.
Beautiful.
And a little dangerous.
Like you.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Good to know.
The rain started, soft at first, and then heavy. They moved inside and closed the windows. Calvin lit a fire in the hearth, even though it was warm.
Why the fire?
Atmosphere.
You're a romantic.
Only with you.
She smiled and pulled him close. They stood by the fire, wrapped in each other's arms, the rain drumming on the roof.
Catherine, seeing mourn or fletter, one sopher said, they were clest down. The morn the wind stus, but that for year in his trams, there was enough, the lust laud spok. But stus, I looked when, I teaching then ties. Catherine, I called it tire, but my signed he was pay for a Christ it's watching, but I cyberly us.
Yeah?
I'm glad we took that chance. Back in last chance.
Me too. Best risk I ever took.
Best partnership I ever made.
It's more than a partnership now.
I know.
He kissed her, and she kissed him back, slow and deep. The fire crackled, and the storm raged outside, but inside they were warm and safe. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless.
I love you, Calvin Chambers.
I love you too, Catherine Chambers.
They stayed by the fire until the storm passed, talking and laughing and simply being together. Later they went to bed and lay wrapped in each other's arms. The night was quiet now, the storm gone, leaving only the soft sound of dripping water.
Tomorrow, we start building that new barn.
And I have a client coming for portraits.
Busy day.
Always.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Me neither.
They drifted off to sleep, content and complete. The days ahead would bring more work, more challenges, more adventures. But they would face them together, as partners, as lovers, as a team. The ranch was their home. Last Chance was their town, and each other was their future. Summer turned to autumn, and the ranch flourished. The new barn went up strong and sturdy. Catherine's photography studio in town opened and became the talk of Last Chance. People came from miles around to have their portraits taken. Calvin expanded the herd, and the ranch hands proved reliable. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm, filled with hard work and quiet joy. One crisp October morning, Catherine woke early and found Calvin already dressed.
Where are you going?
Town. Need to pick up supplies. Want to come?
Always.
They rode in together, the air cool and fresh. The town was bustling with activity. Harvest season meant everyone was busy. They stopped at the general store and loaded up supplies. The storekeeper smiled at them.
You two are the best thing that ever happened to this town.
Why's that?
You brought hope back. Showed us that standing up to corruption works. We just did what needed doing. And we're grateful.
They finished their shopping and headed to the saloon for lunch. Inside, they found the new sheriff and a few ranchers.
Calvin, Catherine, join us.
They sat down and ordered. The conversation turned to town business. A new school was being built. The railroad was bringing more trade. Last Chance was growing.
It's good to see progress.
And peace.
That too.
After lunch, they walked through town, hand in hand. Catherine stopped at her studio to check on things. Everything was in order.
I have appointments all week.
Business? Is good?
Very good.
I'm proud of you.
Right back at you.
They rode home as the sun started its descent. The ranch looked beautiful in the golden light. Calvin helped Catherine down from her horse and pulled her close.
You know what I realized today?
What?
We've built something real here. Something that matters.
We have.
And I don't want to be anywhere else.
Me neither. This is home.
This is us.
He kissed her, and she melted into him. The horses waited patiently. The world kept turning. But in that moment, everything was perfect. They walked to the house together. Their steps matched. Their hearts aligned. Inside, they made dinner and ate by the fire. They talked about their day, their plans, their dreams. Later, they stood on the porch and watched the stars come out.
Catherine, seeing morn or fletter, one sopher said, there were cless down. The morn the wind stus, but that for year in his trams, there was enough, the lust laud spok. But stus, I looked when, I teaching then ties. Catherine, I called it tire, but my signed he was pay for a Christ it's watching, but I cyberly us.
Yeah?
Thank you.
For what?
For taking a chance on me. For being brave when it mattered. For staying.
Thank you for being worth staying for.
They stood there under the stars, wrapped in each other's warmth. The night was cool, but they were warm. The future was uncertain, but they were certain of each other. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.